Okay, so equipment overview, this is all I use for all of my listings. Let me see here. Yeah, this is all the photo equipment that I use. So we have my camera here, and I can pass this around too if you want. This is I feel overkill for what I use. Before I got this camera, I was using the first version of this, which was 11 megapixels, and I loved it. It took great color. I upgraded because the shutter release, the port where it was connecting to was breaking. And so I'm like, I just need a... Do you want to touch it? And so really, it doesn't matter what kind of camera you have, as long as it can support bracketed shots and an external flash. That's really all you need.
And you probably strongly recommend a full frame for...
I would strongly recommend a full frame, but you don't have to. Now, if you do have to do some math for it. So this is a 16 millimeter lens on a full frame camera. If it were on a if it were on a crop frame, on a 1.5 frame, that 16 millimeter lens would then be 24. Okay, so you want to get a wider angle for this crop frame in order to compensate for that. Does that make sense?
If you want to, like I've been thinking about trading my camera. I have a crop sensor and I love a full frame. You know a good place to sell it besides just KSL or?
I just traded my stuff to Allen's, to be quite honest. Yeah, so my A7S, I traded it to him, and then they gave me a resale value on it, and I just paid the difference for the Mark III. I don't know. I keep everything. I either give it away or keep it. Mm-hmm. so I'm the wrong person to ask when it comes to.
Give that away, call me.
Yeah. What kind of camera do you have right now?
D7200 Nikon.
Nikon.
It was the Costco package.
How long ago did you buy it?
Probably 2 years.
Oh, dude, yeah. Just get a wider lens on it.
It's a good camera. Not the 7000.
Yeah. So if you already have the camera, the glass is going to be your best investment. Because this I got back in 2000
with an 18 to 55, and it's just a kit lens, so the glass isn't great. But
right. So
even with that, I have a hard time getting enough in there.
So you want a wider lens. So you probably want like a 10 or 12 millimeter lens, and that's going to make a world of difference for you. Okay. Now the only thing that that might be a difference is getting those detailed shots, because the ISO a lot of times is going to be like 1,000 or 2,000. Even using an aperture of 2.8, and so your photo is going to be super, super grainy. And that's where the advantage of full frame comes in, is because it reduces a lot of that grain. Yeah. But you can still get away with it, because the MLS photos, they're low res. They're super low res. I was super shocked. I had an agent call me, they're like, hey, this isn't as sharp as what you gave to us. I'm like, it's MLS. They're like, well, is there anything that you can do about it? I'm like, I can't. I really can't.
Allow you to update.
Right. And that's why I said before in the past, like, this camera is like overkill for what we do. And you can definitely get away with that, especially, you know, if all you have to do is upgrade your lens, get a 10 to 12 millimeter lens, and then get this. And then my camera settings on the lens is aperture at 9. Do you know what your apertures are on real estate?
Yeah, I generally shoot around, I have to think how I do it. Generally around a 10.
Yeah. Yeah, so between 8 and 12 is kind of like the sweet spot for real estate for the aperture. And all the lenses are going to support that.
I know on my crop sensor one, I use a Tokina 11 to 16 millimeter lens. That's really good wide angle lens for that.
And
what's the price on that?
Tokina's a cheaper one.
11 to what?
11 to 16 millimeter. I don't remember the price of it. It's been quite a few years, but it was quite a bit less than if you were to buy like a Nikon or a Canon brand.
We'll have to give that a try.
But yeah, so this is it. So the drone comes in this combo.
Do you do any flash when you're outside in front, or just natural light?
Just natural light, mostly. I've heard of people doing flash on the outside, but that just gets way too advanced. Now you're dealing with layers. I like simplicity.
Yeah, I don't do layers yet.
Yeah. But if you do the bracketed shots, you'll get a better exposure with bracketed shots than you would just single shots. But not to say that you can't get away with single shots. Single shots, you can still make it look really good. It's just...
I did bracketed once. I was just playing around on my own house. Mm-hmm. And I did a bracketed shot and then just a single shot. And then I put them together in Lightroom.
Yep.
It didn't look that much different. I must have done something wrong.
So
maybe my brackets weren't far enough apart.
well, so my brackets I keep at 3 stops apart at a 3 shot. When it's a 5 shot, it's 2 stops apart.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay, because 3 stops allows me to get like through the windows on the underexposed, and then the overexposed allows me to get those deeper in shadows. But the magic comes in after you take that bracketed shot into Lightroom, after you've layered that together. Now you can manipulate it more. So it's all about manipulation. So
more information. So.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So you're increasing that dynamic range to be able to manipulate the shadows and the darks and the highlights and the whites. So at that point, what I would recommend doing is take your past projects, consolidate them, or do the HDR, play around with the settings until you like it, and then save that preset. And people ask me like, what presets should I purchase? Are there any presets on sale? Like, what presets do you recommend? What I recommend is don't buy any presets, make your own.
Make it the way you like.
Make it the way you like it, because that preset is made for the way that artist likes it. And oftentimes they're selling it because they want to make money or they want to get leads, and that's the only reason why they give it. Any professional is gonna use their own presets. They're gonna make it and fine tune it the way they want it. They may purchase those templates to kind of like to get a start, but they're gonna manipulate it and work with it on that. But yeah, so what I would recommend, go to your past projects, create your HDR in Lightroom, play around with the adjustments, and then save that preset. And then it's gonna just save you a lot of time in the future. Because I have presets for every lens for just about every scenario that I'm in. And that helps me speed up the process. But here's the other thing. I save those presets, and then I show people through my video tutorials how to do it, and I give them the presets, and I say, replicate this. And now I don't have to worry about editing. And that allows me to scale the business a little bit better. Kind of like in real estate. Like, you can go out, you can knock doors, you can sell, you can negotiate, you can do your selling presentation, your buyer presentation, or you can find those people and just pass it on to somebody on your team and they can go and do it. Just show them the best practices. So it's a very similar concept because it's business, you know. Okay, so my lenses, I have a 24-105. This lens, if you already have a DSLR camera, upgrade into a better lens. This lens I've had since 2014, and I bought it used, and I still use it today. It's just good glass. I mean, if you look at it, it's wearing out, but it's good glass. I don't buy it for the mechanics, I buy it for the glass. And then as you upgrade your camera, then you plug in that solid glass that you've been using before, and now you've just upgraded everything with it. So buy a cheap body, buy good glass, and then you just go from there. Make sense? Okay. The flash, this is a knockoff, a Sony knockoff, but I've been using it for about 2 years now. And this is one of the things that I had to learn in order to set myself apart from other photographers, is to learn to use flash. Once I got into a system, now I can replicate it just about every time. Okay. There's a lot of trial and error initially at the start of the home just to gauge light sources and different lighting. But once I dial in, then it's just shooting from there. And I typically keep it at one setting, and that's at full power. And I let this little thing diffuse the light going through. So I either use it right here to super soften the light, or I use it here to give it a little bit more hard light, or I just use the bare and just use it. So I just keep it at one setting, but I dial in on my shutter speed.
Now, when you don't have the boot on, or whatever you call the shooting, are you finding that it's very concentrated, the flash in certain?
So this one was really cool. So this one diffused, so without this little deflector or diffractor or whatever you want to call it, refractor, is that what it is? It's at 24 millimeters, and it'll let you know. So it's at 24 millimeters, but then once I pull this out to diffract the light or refract the light, I don't even know, whatever. Yeah, it does it at a 14 millimeter. So my lens is at 16 millimeters, so I know that it's gonna, yeah, so you can see right there that it's at 14 millimeters. And then I can, if I had that in, it broke off because I used it so many times. I had to tape it on the top. But if that were tucked in, I could range it from 24 millimeters to 105, so I can actually just like hone it in if my lens is zoomed in more. Because if it's zoomed in at 105, then I'm like telephoto almost, and that thing has to be like a beam.
Right.
But typically, yeah, I'll do, if there's not enough light coming from this, which there are stronger flash sources. If there's not enough light going to this, I'll normally increase my ISO no more than 800 to prevent a lot of that grain. But if there's too much light, like if I'm in a bathroom and that thing is just blowing out every shot I do, I'll normally increase the shutter speed and decrease the ISO to help just kind of like take in less light and not be so harsh.
And just leave that at max then.
Yeah, I leave it at max. And so, but that's according to my editing style.
Right.
And that's going to be different from person to person if you don't shoot in my way. Okay. There's a site I've heard recently at Box Brownie. Have you heard of it? You can submit photos in there and they'll edit it for you. Okay. So now I have editors that work for me in producing photos, but to scout out editors is very hard. It's very time consuming, and sometimes they'll put their best editors up front to get the business, and then when you start having consistent jobs, and they start giving them to the newbies. Yeah. And so you really have to like regulate that, because if you're on a time crunch, then it can be a nuisance. Okay. And then, yeah, so I use my 24-105 for some of the telephoto shots. 50mm and my 16-35 are like my bread and butter. This I mostly use for like video. When I'm doing video, whether it's like shooting an agent or doing a home tour, I'll use this and my 16, but that's about it. But yeah, the L series lens for Canon are just, they're amazing.
So question on video.
Yeah.
So when you're using a DSLR camera and you have a little bit of movement, it's not just on a tripod looking at you kind of thing, or let's say someone's moving,
Yeah.
not saying they're really doing this, but like moving around.
Yeah, they like to fidget. They walk around.
To keep them in focus, are you just increasing the aperture? Is that
Yeah.
doing to like make it so like they're not going in and out of focus constantly?
Right. So if I'm outside, my aperture will probably be between 5 and 10. If I'm inside, it's going to be as tight as I can because it's low light. But you do have that movement. Now, one of the workarounds for that is if I'm filming inside and they're moving and I have my glide cam and I'm moving with them, I'm using my Sony lens with my Sony camera, because that communication back and forth is going to be unbeatable, because I have a Canon, an adapter, and my Sony. And so I normally leave this at autofocus. And Sony's really good. I don't know about the other cameras, but...
So do you have to half press it?
No. So you can have continuous autofocus where it follows. Yep. And so if you're shooting video for somebody else, you want that. If you're shooting video for yourself, you just have to be aware that you can't move. And so if that's the case, if I'm having this glass talk to this camera, I let the agent know, hey, you can't be moving back and forth, or I'll keep that aperture a lot smaller. Like the hole's a lot smaller, right?
Higher number.
Yeah. It's so weird how they do that. So that way it gives them some room to go into. But also you have to keep in mind, like, that's really not super important, because they're not putting this on 4K TVs. They're watching this on their cell phone. That's where the world is now. And so keeping that context of where the video is going to be delivered also helps you understand what are your parameters for shooting video.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do y'all do video?
I'll just see if, I didn't know, with my Nikon camera, I guess there's a setting in there.
Uh-huh.
I know how to do continuous for moving object shooting, but video, I thought you always had to half press it.
No. Well, I'm not sure about Nikon, but on this one you don't, and I try to keep it continuous. Like I say, I try to do things like simple, and even if it means like going against the grain of, hey, you want to do everything manual. No, if automatic's going to help you get the shot, do automatic,
Yeah.
And that's part of being a professional, is understanding what you can and can't do. Make sense? But no, I mean, I guess that's more of validation than anything, right? Because, yeah. I mean, you know how all that works. And so that's what I do. And nobody complains about being blurry in front of the camera. Okay. So camera, questions about the camera? You're going to upgrade to full frame, or you're going to upgrade your lens?
I don't know yet.
I would recommend, hindsight from my perspective, start with as cheap as possible. So the lens would probably be the cheapest, because if you get a full frame, now you're still going to have to buy the lens.
Right.
When it says lens is the cheapest, it's not cheap.
Well, yeah. Well, of the two. I mean, you can pay 3 G's for a camera,
Yeah.
and then another $1,000 for the lens, or you can buy a $1,000 lens and just call it good and just shoot with that. Yeah. But, okay, any questions about, what kind of camera do you shoot with?
The A6000.
A6, okay. Okay, so it's Sony mirrorless?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that has a really good, what kind of lens do you use?
I use my wide angle lens, and I don't know, I can't remember what it is.
You don't have it with you?
Yeah, it's in my car, but I can go grab it. But I use the kit lens, the 50 whatever, it came with the small lens.
Yeah.
And I use my wide angle lens a lot.
Yep. In real estate, you have to. And I love doing the wide angle with real estate on videos, with real estate agents on videos, because it allows them to move around and it showcases the room really, really well. And it's just good glass, like the Sony glass, the what is it? The Zeiss. I was gonna say Sennheiser. Sennheiser's my microphone, but the Zeiss lens is really good glass. But okay, and then lens 16 to 35. So 16 to 35 is the millimeter. It's kind of like how wide and how much you can zoom in. The 4, if you see one number there, that's really good. If you see two numbers like 4 to 5.6, it's a cheaper lens. It's more like it's a lower quality. So the more fixed it can be, and also the lower the number, the more expensive it is. So if this were 1.8 or 2.8 or 2.0, it'd be super expensive. 4.0 is actually really good. And if it can stay 4.0 between 16 and 35, if it can stay that number, that also shows that it's good glass. Okay, 50 millimeter, my nifty 50, my plastic fantastic, and then my Mavic 2.